Hey everyone, this is lecture 6, the final lecture of week 2, and this is a continuation of the preceding video. And in this video, we're going to continue talking about Cain and Abel. Again, you can listen to this as an audio instead of watching it if you want. In the last video lecture, Cain and Abel were introduced, and as I noted, the meanings of their names are extremely significant, okay, and may explain or may give you hints of what this, what some of the ways the writers are explaining the first murder. Okay, the names of the characters also, as I noted, set up for the crime. Okay, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the crime as well as the ramifications of the first murder. Okay. The inciting incident, or the thing that really sets the story off, is found in Genesis 4:3, where it states, "In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel, for his part, brought the firstlings of his flock, their fatty portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell." Notice that things are okay until this incident when both brothers, attempt to bring offerings to God. And God, instead of saying, "Hey, I like presents," or, he favors the present of one brother over against the other. Okay. And of course, the most relevant or obvious question that you will hit at this point is, well, why? Why does God reject Cain's offering but receive those of Abel favorably? And when we ask this question, our mind, in order to make ourselves feel better, immediately assume an answer. Okay, and it happens very fast, right? Well, God has to be fair and just and good, because if God is not, right, it's a very dark vision of the world. We're living really in pure chaos, right? Hence, if God rejected Cain's gift, well, God must have had a good reason to do so. And at this point, we shift the question, okay, to what does Cain do wrong? Cain must have done something wrong, must have done something bad to have his gift be rejected. He must be at fault, because if he is not, then God may be at fault, and we can't really have that. Okay, and the easy answer is, and I hear this from students all the time in class, well, Abel must have brought something better. Okay, and at this point, students are kind of looking into the text, and they hit upon always, right, this part of the text where it says, well, Abel brought the firstlings of his flock, right? First must mean better or best, okay? Readers argue, and then they fill in. See, here's the textual evidence that Abel brought a more deserving offering, and therefore that's why God liked his gift, but did not like Cain's. Okay, and this is how, for example, if you read the book of Hebrews, which have these like nice little short summaries of biblical text, this is how they read it. But okay. But notice how much assumptions went into that interpretation. Okay, Genesis, the writer of Genesis, does not say this. The writers of Genesis do not say that Cain brought a deficient gift, nor does it say that Abel brought a better gift. Okay, notice that the writers could have said this, and actually, if they had said that, it would have made the story so much easier, right? It would have also given it kind of a nice, neat message. Okay, and they could have said this, the writers, but they don't. Okay, we're not actually told that Cain offered a deficient or bad gift. Okay, we are only told that God simply did not like it for reasons that are unstated. Okay, so for example, take a look at the firstling language, which like I said, students point to as maybe evidence of Abel's gift being better. Okay, when people say that to me, I say, well, see, the problem is that one is like a farmer, and and one is a gardener. Okay, and there's differences, and the differences are important. Okay, Cain, as a gardener, firstlings don't work the same way for fruits and vegetables. You can have a firstling of a flock if you raise animals for a living, but you can't have a firstling of vegetables and fruit. Like many of them get budded at the same time. Okay. Um, and also, I mean, no offense, but the firstlings of fruit are not necessarily the best anyways, right? I mean, we all know like it's like the ugly fruits that are like the best tasting, right? So there's no way that Cain could have brought the firstlings of his plants, okay? And notice what the text does not say. The text does not say that Cain brought a deficient gift, a bad gift. Maybe he brought, ugly apples, and that's what God. The Bible does not tell you why his gift was rejected. Okay, the closest that one can make sense of it is that God is a carnivore, and indeed, in the Hebrew Bible, he is a carnivore, right? Insofar as he demands animal sacrifices, right? So the closest answer you get is, well, God likes hamburgers above a salad. Okay, I mean, I kind of get this. Okay, and therefore that's why he likes Abel's gift better, right? Because he likes meat. Okay. The problem with this, is that, of course, this doesn't really address a theological problem, right? Which is this, right? If we cannot think of anything that Cain did wrong, then this suggests that God is unfair. And maybe worse than unfair, random. Okay? God does not like Cain's gift because God doesn't like everyone or like everything. And maybe, and this implies, of course, this other kind of very difficult to understand concept. This seems to imply that God just might like some people and some of their gifts better than others, just because. Okay. As I said, most of us are super uncomfortable with this idea that God favors some people over others and some things over other things, because this seems wholly and wildly unfair. Okay. But let's confront this uncomfortable issue head on. Look at the world we live in. Does it speak of a fair God or an unfair God? Which is a more realistic vision of God as reflected in the world? And remember that the writers also lived in the same world. Okay, so there may be a reason why they have, written the story as thus. Okay. The world that we live in, it's difficult. Okay, it's filled with lots of great times of beauty, points of justice, but it still remains incredibly unfair. Okay, and remember that the story is part of the primeval history, Genesis 1 through 11, and the primeval history is all about explaining why the world is the way that it is and why we humans are the way that we are. Okay, in this world, okay, some people are born with the right appearance, the right skin color, gender, sexual orientation, parents, family, born in the right country, at the right time, with the right amount of money, social economic standing, while others are not. Okay? What in the ancient world was interpreted as God's favor in our world is called a luck of birth. The world is deeply unfair, and it really does feel like God likes some of us better than others. Okay? And yet, interestingly, we humans are deeply sensitive to issues of unfairness. Okay? Indeed, you can watch on YouTube this monkey experiment where one monkey is offered cucumbers and another is offered the vastly superior grapes. And the one that is offered the cucumber goes apeshit crazy. Okay? And he really, he is very mad. He does not get grapes. Okay? So this is a very kind of innate feeling. Okay? Okay. Now, let's turn to a slightly related but different question. Do we want God to be completely fair, to treat everyone and everything equally? And, when I ask this in class all the time, and when I ask this, I see, immediately people say, yes, we want God to be fair, and then they, then like a light goes off, and then the head, starts kind of going the other direction, okay? Remember that complete fairness might mean, if everything was fair, that we all live in a tiny hovel with the same amount of money, probably no car, okay, maybe only one television, okay, maybe a tiny one. And the truth of it is that most of us, when we think about an actually fair world, we don't really want this either, okay? What we really want, which we don't want to say because it makes us sound bad, is that we want a God who is kind of fair, generally fair, but slightly more favorable to us, our kids, our families, just a little bit more. Okay, we want God to look upon our gifts with more favor, just a little bit more favor, maybe a lot more favor, I don't know, than those of our brothers and sisters. Okay, and the writers, again, they're very clever, right? They recognize God's role, right, in human jealousy and anger and even human violence. Right? They understand that the larger unfairness of the world allowed by God grieves and hurts and angers people. Okay. Indeed, notice that there's no expectation of fairness by the writers at all. This is a modern idea. Okay? It is certainly not ancient. By depicting God's favoritism as one of the causes behind the conflict between Cain and Abel, the story argues that injustice and inequality, the lack of birth, and the deep anguish that stem from them are also partially responsible for the rivalry and breakdown of familial relationships and the violence that ensues. Indeed, the biblical writers realize or recognize that this divine unfairness so well that they assign God an enlarged and deeply problematic role in the rivalry and the subsequent violence that follows. We are told that because of God's rejection, Cain is dejected. Literally, it says his face fell. Okay, he's sad and upset. He tried, but he's not good enough, and he doesn't even know why. Okay, he wanted to do something good, right? I mean, he's bringing a gift, but it didn't work out for him. We all know Cains. Okay, many of us probably have been Cains at some point. Okay, think about, you place yourself in the position of Cain and think, how would you want someone to act, okay, or respond, okay, to a point when you feel dejected and upset, okay, and rejected, okay? And compare that with God's response in Genesis 4, verse 6. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you don't do well, sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it." Okay, this is not a good response. Okay, it's almost the opposite of what you should say to someone who is undergoing some difficulties. And it is the opposite of being helpful. Okay, God is not at all compassionate. Okay, rather he says, "Well, this is all your fault, Cain. Why are you angry?" Well, why is he asking that? Of course he knows why he's angry. Okay, if you do well, will you not be accepted? Notice how the blame for this all is foisted back on Cain. Okay, and the most key part of this is God doesn't even tell Cain how to do better or how to improve next time. That at least would be kind of useful, right? Why doesn't he say, "Well, I like meat better, just bring me a hamburger next time"? All God says is, no, stop being angry. It's all your fault, by the way. Oh, and don't do anything you'll regret, right? And it almost seems as if through this reply that God is, pushing him to actually act irresponsibly. Okay, some commentators have indeed wondered whether God is setting Cain up here, that he is pushing a depressed or angry person to the point that whereby God knows that this will lead to violent actions. Okay, indeed, some interpreters have wondered whether if God had said nothing at all, it just rejected the gift but said nothing. Okay, if he had just left things alone, whether there would have been a murder in the first place. Okay, okay. Now, and indeed, as may be expected, violence does follow. Okay, Genesis 4:8. Okay, I am reading. This is the NRSV. So I will read what it says in Genesis 4:8, and then I'll tell you what it actually says in the Hebrew. Okay, Genesis 4:8. Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. In verse 9, then the Lord said to Cain, "Hey, where's your brother Abel?" And he said, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground." Okay. Now, most of your translations fill in this tiny conversation between Cain and Abel in the garden. Let's go out to the field. Okay. The problem is that originally in the Hebrew, that whole conversation is missing. It literally says, verse 8, Cain said to his brother Abel, nothing. There's nothing there. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. That's what the Hebrew really says. Okay, the conversation is missing. So again, why is it missing? I mean, this, would knowing what they said in the field change things? Would it change our interpretation of the stories and the characters? Okay, so let's do a quick thought experiment. Okay, I'm just making stuff up now. What if this is what we had in the text? And Cain said to his brother Abel, "You're such a goody two-shoe, showing me up all the time. I wish you were never born." And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother and killed him. Or let's take another alternative. Cain said to his brother Abel, "Abel, brother, I feel like I'm going crazy. I keep hearing God's voice, saying bad things to me, telling me maybe to harm myself. Can you help me?" And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother and killed him. Or take another alternative. Okay? Cain said to his brother Abel, "Abel, I'm really depressed and sad that God didn't like my gift. And I'm really jealous because he liked your gift. Can you help me to do better?" And Abel said, no wonder God doesn't like your gift. You're such a loser. Why would I help someone like you anyways? And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Notice how important the conversation is. Okay, it depending on what is said between the two brothers, okay, we get closer to knowing why this murder happened and how much we should be empathetic to the various characters. Okay, so then the question is, why does the writer leave such an important conversation blank? Okay. Well, to answer that, or to begin to answer that, you have to imagine yourself in the position of this poor writer. Okay, and you are tasked with explaining the first murder, the event that introduces killing each other into the world. Okay, this is an etiology, as I said. Okay, I've given you 3 possibilities. Okay, and even with all the ones that I've given you, it is not clear whether there is any story, any explanation, any conversation that will clearly explain, that will fully explain, right, why we kill each other. Okay. The conversation makes us more or less empathetic to the various characters, but the reality is there is nothing that explains why we hurt each other, at least not satisfactorily. So instead, the text and the writers, like all good writers and all good stories, instead of providing clear answer, merely ask these questions, hints of possible explanations. Okay, nudge you to maybe think about it a little bit more deeply. How would you behave in this situation? When do you feel like Cain, and when do you feel like Abel? Why does God keep allowing bad things to constantly happen? Why do we hurt each other? Why is the world so unfair? Okay. Maybe we hurt each other because life is so unfair we can't take it sometimes. Maybe it's because we're jealous. Okay, maybe we just had too much. Maybe it's because we're selfish and want to lash out. Or maybe it's because we're tired, because our efforts are never good enough. Okay. At the end, we don't know the answers to these whys. Okay. The story, however, emphasizes the key thing that we should remember. Okay, and this is really brought out in Elie Wiesel's beautiful article that I've given you to read. Okay, whatever the real reason for murder and violence, our ability to hurt each other stems from a lack of recognition of our interconnectedness, of our sisterhood and brotherhood, a lack of recognition that we are all family. Okay, that we are so that we are in charge of this question: where is Abel, your brother? Okay, an answer that God already knows. This is a question that God already knows the answer to. But it seems like the writers almost end or pause at this question, portrays God asking you this to remind you of your own interconnectedness, your own brotherhood and sisterhood to the Abels of the world. Okay, everyone, have a good weekend.